This episode of the Amp Hour is brought to you by ViaDesigner.com, part of Triad Semiconductor. Who needs a chip printer when you can design your own mixed-signal chips on your desktop? ViaDesigner is a Windows-based software for the design and simulation of analog and digital circuits. At ViaDesigner.com, you can learn about mixed-signal design, share your design IP, and form teams to create your own custom VIA ASICs. Go to ViaDesigner.com/theAmpHour and enter coupon code AMP100 at registration for a free year of Via Designer, a $500 value. This is the Amp Hour podcast, recorded April 8th, 2013. Episode 140. Staunch, Specialty, Sanctanimity.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Chris Gamble's Analog Life.
And yes, we are brought to you by Triad Semiconductor.
Well, we'll get to that. Come on, man.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the middle of the show. I don't have a radio voice. Sorry, I can't do that, you know.
Oh, no. Well, neither do I. I think that was in the feedback of get a professional voice actor to do our advertising for us. And
to do our intros, right. Well, the reason you do the intros is because you're less nasal than I am. So
right, and I'm very low cost compared to a voice actor.
Right. Yes, we're a budget operation here on the Amp Hour, folks.
Maybe when Intel starts advertising with us, we'll get a voice actor. But until then, I think we're good enough. The info is all that matters.
Intel, are they still in business, are they? Didn't ARM take over the world?
I saw their CEO, their soon-to-be former CEO, Paul Otellini, is making $19 million this year.
Is that all? That's not much.
Yeah.
He should be milking the system more than that. This guy needs to buy a clue.
Maybe. I don't know, man. I was discussing like the executive compensation and just just like the general high level C-suite kind of C-suite when you're like CEO or CTO. It's just it's got to be so crazy to get up there. I mean, obviously you and I and probably most of our listening audience
never gonna know.
We'll never know, Like my buddy the buyer, right? The one I've talked about before. Right. He was lamenting one of the CEOs he's worked under before who was an engineer, and I'm like, because they were so cost sensitive or something like that. And it's just like, it doesn't matter what your past is. There's such like a magic formula to get like, first off, you're set up for failure. And second off, like in a technology company, it's just so hard to get the balance of like making money and spending money and everything else. I don't know. Mm-hmm. C-suite's just never, I love the money, but I don't think I'd ever love the lifestyle. You're just.
Right.
You got to give it all, right? I mean, like you and I have talked about work-life balance before. But
but if you fail, you just take your golden parachute and go to the next one.
That is true.
It's a great, it's a great deal. You can't fail.
Yeah, that part's not bad, but money isn't everything, man. I mean, like, I don't know. Would you rather be? I think I could probably answer this, but would you rather be, in meetings and in shareholder meetings all day, making tons of money, or would you rather be working on technology and hanging out with
exactly.
Cool people?
I totally agree.
Yeah, so that's
it's not a job I'd enjoy. I'm sure.
Exactly. I mean, like the life balance thing, man. That's a big deal for me.
Life balance, same here. And you'd think I have it, doing this gig full time, but no, I'm working harder than I ever have.
Yeah, but you still enjoy it, right?
Before I walked out the door this morning, I complained to the wife. I'm always behind the eight ball. Always behind the eight ball in terms of stuff I've got to get done. I'll never get ahead ever. It's like it's that continuous constant pressure to produce.
Dave does not hire anyone. He will not. He is very much like an engineer. Will not relinquish control. I can just do it better myself. I can do it faster myself. Me and Dave have had long conversations.
Saying it comes down to the practicalities. What I'm going to get them to do? What am I going to hire them for?
Yeah, there's always inefficiencies for that. I mean, like even in like in layout, right? Like I don't get to do my own layout at work. I have to first off, I have to hand it off. I think if I could, I probably would do it myself. But there are benefits of doing that kind of thing, right? I mean,
sure.
There's overhead. I have to send emails. I have to correct, stuff that wasn't done the way I'd like it to be done, or is just wrong based on my direction or their assumptions, whatever. But I don't know, man. At some point,
everything I do is so personal.
I agree with that.
And that's that's the hole I've dug myself into, I guess.
I guess so, but I still think, like any job in electronics, at some point you have to relinquish. I read about startups a lot too, right? And that's always a stumbling point for startups. At some point you have to give up some kind of control because you have to sleep or you'll die. Like you'll literally die.
No, see, if I was doing a startup, or running a business, I'd do exactly the same thing. But this is essentially my hobby, which I've turned into a business. It's just something I enjoy doing. Right? So,
I guess so.
Yeah, I could design out the farm of, 10 kits or whatever to somebody else to do all the design and implementation, and then I just slap my name on it and be done with it. But that's not the business I'm in.
That's true. That's true. It's a tough decision to make, trying to make that jump. I'm sure a lot of people that have success have to make that decision at some point. Even I was thinking about, like you and me and how, I know that you've been focused on video and everything else like that. It's just like what you concentrate on, right? I was thinking the other day, I would be really good at the amp hour and making more YouTube videos. Obviously I don't, but if I just had my head down, was making circuits all day long. And it's kind of a paradox because if you're doing just that, then you don't have time for the video and the actual publishing part of it, right? There's always like that balance point of, I want to do stuff, but I also have to show it. That's tough.
What happens to me, right?
Yeah.
I'm too busy producing the videos because that's what people want me to do, that I don't have any time left over to finish the kits and designs and, work on, I'd love to spend 2 weeks or a month working on some project, but at the same time I can't film the videos to show how I do it because they're two full-time jobs, so to speak.
Well, and the same thing goes with management versus engineering, right? It's like, as an engineer, I feel that draw towards like, oh man, I want to make some decisions. I just want to make stuff happen. I want to get stuff built. I want to change the world. I want to, make more stuff, right? And at the same time, though, I know that if I do that, then I'm in meetings with vendors, I'm in meetings with manufacturing, I'm in meetings with everything else, right? And I'm not actually designing them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My name might still go on the top of the, the patent or whatever, but I don't have that satisfaction of, man, I designed, I was in it, right? I was in the thick of it. I figured that shit out, and it's a tough balance. I've talked to a lot of people about that too, because like one of my mentors, right? One of my former technical mentors, he was kind of transitioning into the management side of things, and he talked about that. Apparently, as he got older, he wanted just to have more of the hands-in control and actually making that change happen. And I could see it because, at a certain point, you get sick of seeing idiots not do it, right? And you're like, I could do this better myself, right? That's just the engineering way. I want to do it. But you have to give up stuff in order to do so.
And that's, sucks. Interestingly, what part of my Ignite talk is about.
Really? That's coming up, huh?
Well, that's what it kind of starts out as. Like, right in the first couple of sentences, I talk about how, I used to have a real engineering job, working for the man, and I'd be working on something for 6 months, and then it'd just get shit-canned. It'd never make it to market. So I've just wasted, 6 months of my life working on that. If your goal is if your ultimate satisfaction is seeing something produced and being given to the world and used, right? So, and I rarely had that satisfaction because most of them projects, as I've talked about before, have been canned or, didn't actually make it out the door. But whereas now I'm getting that satisfaction, weekly of actually producing material that makes it out there and makes people happy,
Yeah.
So I've got my dream, but it comes at a price.
But over that fence over there, that grass, it looks, it's such a nice shade of green. Oh.
You can smell it too.
Yeah.
Freshly cut.
Freshly cut, yep.
So be careful what you wish for, because now, as another thing I talk about in the in the talk, or will hopefully. Is that constant pressure? That's one of the downsides. Yeah. It's relentless. You know, I've just got to keep producing that content, otherwise the dream ends. So you know, it's like, woo. How do you win?
Tough, man.
I don't know.
It's tough.
Yep.
And we don't want to sound like ungrateful or whiny.
No,
right? I mean,
not at all. But we're just talking about the practicalities of what happens when you...
Right, exactly.
You know, it's just what happens in the real world.
It's interesting hearing about, you know, I always see these surveys of people as they get older and what age they're at. You know, like what is the... You know, they ask someone who's at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever, you know, what is the best age of your life? And they always say, right now, right?
Now.
And it's funny because in technology, or at least in, you know, at least from my experience and talking to other people, it's always, some other time. You know, it's like, it'd be nice to have that same, you know, mindfulness of, it's not bad right now, you know, it's cool. I'm designing circuits, I'm working on cool things, you know, it's not always going to be rosy, obviously. Last week I talked about how crappy manufacturing can be.
I was just thinking about how wonderful it was back in the, seemingly wonderful it was. You know, 20 years ago there was no internet, there was none of this distraction, and I would spend 6 months just working on a design and do it all on paper and everything else. You know, there wasn't all this CAD and looking up stuff, and you know, thumb through your data book collection, and you thumb through catalogs, and you'd just spend your whole life just working on this, and it was fantastic. Yeah. But now... you know, I mean, there's so many distractions in life that you can't focus on. It's hard.
Right, but on the flip side of that, the access you have, right? Just
now the access,
you know, the distributors and everything
you
else.
Wouldn't trade it. I've said that before. I wouldn't trade the communications revolution and the internet for anything.
Right. I was actually I was by the bookshelf where all the data books were at my office today. I wasn't looking at the data books specifically, but I was, you know, I kind of peered over them.
And you were just going, look at
No, they look terrible.
Those were the days.
They were right. I was flipping through a price book actually, and it was terrible. Who would want to do that? And then I actually, no, what was the one I picked up? It was like a wiring guide. It was a guide to wiring, right?
Yeah.
And that information is still all out there, right? It's all on the internet. It's, you know, like, but I don't have to see all the extraneous stuff. I mean, I don't have to see like the, you know, if I'm looking at how to wire up a, you know, 20 gauge wire, I don't have to see 12, 16, 18, 20, 22, 20, you know, like it's, I don't know. It just, it was really overwhelming. I opened this book up and I'm just like, oh, why? What am I don't know. That was really overwhelming. I don't know. I grew up.
Know any different back then?
That's true. We didn't know
any different.
I mean, I grew up.
That's why I guess we seemingly look at, you know, back on these things with fond memories. You know,
I don't though. That's the thing. Like I look back on. So what it immediately recalled was the days of, I guess it was like elementary and middle school, of doing the research projects, right, and like citing stuff in a book. You know, and now it's just like, I don't know, hyperlinks are like my second language these days. I know that not everyone's like that. I mean, like if you blog, it might be a little bit more your language, but bibliographies. No, thank you.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
We're just getting old because we've been doing this show for 2.5 years.
We have been doing this 2.5 years. Yeah, that was another thing that hit me today.
Who's the bastard that pointed that out to us, or was it you?
It was me. I'm the bastard. So I've been looking, you know, so I've been working on these T-shirts, right, and the slogan and everything, and I have a whole list of slogans too that I don't know if you saw I tweeted, but
no, I haven't looked at tweets in the last day.
No, that's okay. But you know, so I was going back through and just trying to find. Oh yeah, that's okay. I was just trying to find, you know, just like past data and, you know, like. Because I know for a fact that you and I have said on multiple occasions that would make a great T-shirt, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, a dozen times, I'm sure.
Yeah, at least. And I've been trying to find that stuff, and apparently I just never wrote it down, and so none of that stuff is recorded.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah. So, oh God, that's the worst too, isn't it? Like when you know something happened, you just can't find it. Like searching through like old emails and stuff.
Oh, well, this is what happens with my... I've been trying to write this bloody 5-minute Ignite talk, right?
Yeah.
I've been spending days on this, writing this bloody script. because I don't normally write scripts, right?
Right.
Off the cuff. And and I always, and I'm out somewhere, and I always think, I'm always thinking about it. So I think of, something great to say. And then I go, I've got to remember that and put it down. And then, of course, you never do. And then you get there and write, I have to write this script. I can't remember a bloody thing.
Yep.
Oh,
that's the word. Yeah, that like writer's block, but you know somewhere in your brain that it has been thought of before. There's
exactly, and it was brilliant. It was perfect, and
that happened to me the other day with a schematic actually. So I've been doodling on this problem, and I was on a plane. And I was reading the data sheet, and I didn't have a pen, and no one around me had a pen. And I had this idea for a circuit. I think this is totally serious. I had this idea for this circuit diagram, right? And so I was like drawing it out with my finger, like on the page with just my finger, and like trying to remember, just trying to commit it to memory. And I'm like, God, this is terrible. Like honestly. And then I got off the plane. Obviously, I forgot all about it. And then I got back on the plane to go home. And I'm like, I had remembered to buy a pen because I had to buy one because whatever reason. And I bought one, and I was working on the circuit, and I finally get to it, and I'm like, no, there's nothing there. It's all gone.
Nah, this isn't as good as the one I thought of
exactly.
yesterday.
That is
See,
a terrible
you weren't
feeling.
inventive enough. What you needed to do was find a sharp object somewhere and cut your finger open, and then write in blood.
Right? Or just carve it right into my hand.
There's always that ink medium, inside you.
Yeah.
Man.
No.
Yeah, I know what it's like.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to write a script for something?
Like a... Yes.
Like a
my
talk
Maker Faire
or
talk
something?
last year. It was terrible.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was. There's video of it being terrible.
What your talk was terrible, or the process of writing the script was terrible?
A little bit of both, yeah. A little bit of both.
Right.
Not the best public speaker in the first place. Once I'm behind a microphone.
Me neither,
Yeah, in the internet, it's not
no,
bad.
I'm
when
so
it's just
used to
me and
winging it. Well, I told you about that, when I was at the a couple of years back when I did it from did the show from the hotel room in
yeah.
Anaheim. That's it. I remember
with Renesas.
Yeah, and and I tried to write. I had to get up in front of 1,000 people and talk about this contest, and I tried to write everything down, and I went, this just isn't working. I spent hours in my hotel trying to write it, and I go, screw this, I'm just going to wing it. And I winged it, and it was all right,
Well, and
unfortunately, I can't do that.
You are what you practice, right? I mean, and you are very practiced at winging it.
And, exactly. So I can probably get up there and waffle on. Yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but at least I'll get through it.
Yeah.
And
I think just in general for engineers, I mean, we're not necessarily the best public speakers in the first place. I know that,
exactly.
I don't know. I get that. I get very. I don't know if it's anxious. I get jumpy. That's the thing. Like I just start talking really, really fast.
Yeah.
And it always feels weird trying to slow yourself down and.
Yep.
And in Figure 1, there was resistance.
And everyone's sleeping in the audience, so it doesn't matter, so they're not looking at you anyway,
Yeah, bonus.
And that's why I foolishly signed up to this Ignite Talk thing. To put, A, it'd be fun, and B, it'd put pressure on me to actually, put a lot of work into it and see if I can actually do something like this.
Yeah. And once again, deadlines are a tricky mistress, I have to say. Like I've told you before, you need to hire someone to be your boss almost.
Right.
The jury's still out if I need that kind of thing. I think I do. I personally do best when I schedule myself for something completely unrelated. Like if I scheduled myself to, design a circuit board for myself, I would get really good at guitar that day. If I scheduled myself to take a guitar lesson, I would have a perfect circuit board. That's mostly how my brain works.
Right. And we talked about that before. Deadline. If you set yourself a deadline, and that's engineers are great at working to deadlines. Works every time.
Yeah, but like I said, I'm not always sure about for me, the self-imposed deadline is just...
the self-imposed, you've got to publicly commit to it or as you said, have someone hire, you have to hire someone to whip your ass. And then once you've got that, then, It's
Right,
it's the same thing with this radio show, right? We would never do it unless we had the pressure of like 6,000 or 7,000 people demanding this thing every week, and they expect it on a Tuesday, right? So, like, we just go, no, couldn't be bothered. No, let's just leave it for, couldn't be bothered, right? Yeah. It'd happen.
That does help.
Guaranteed.
For fledgling podcasters, that does help a lot. Weekly deadlines.
Yes. You say, we do it on Tuesdays, and that's it, and boom.
Of course, now that I've said that, I'll curse myself into being like, Dave, next week I can't make it.
Yeah, can't make it. Yeah. Well, we've done it a couple of times. Over Christmas we just went, what the hell? We're taking a week off, Screw it.
Yeah, I mean, well, so I've been like that. So I've been, I get programming books out. I try and do that with like programming and stuff, and it never works with that. It just...
Right.
I don't know why. I don't know what it is about programming. I think what the thing is though too, like teaching myself KiCad. That was another one where it was like,
right, yeah.
I just, I wanted to do it,
but you didn't have the discipline to sit down and do it.
Exactly. It wasn't until I had a project that I really, really needed to get done, and I said, "You're not buying a license of anything else." Because I couldn't afford like an Altium license. I didn't want to buy an Eagle license, and the board was too big to be a freemium license for Eagle or anything else, which I had experience with. And I was like, all right, this is the time. This is when I'm going to do it.
Yep.
And that one project, man, after that first one, that helps a lot. In any CAD program you do. But with programming, I still haven't been able to crack that nut. I mean, like. I've done some C. I've dabbled a lot of C, but like all those like massive online open courseware things.
Oh yeah,
nope.
Yeah. I've signed up for a couple of those, and I last one lesson. I don't even make it through the first lesson. It's like
exactly.
No.
Right. Well, there's this site on Pando Daily, which is a tech site I like a lot. They had the top 10 websites that teach coding, right? And it's great. I mean, like, this kind of stuff is awesome. They've mentioned
if you got the discipline to do it, it's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Google, Coursera, all the ones that the people might have heard of. They're really good it's good information, but nothing for me replaces having classmates who depend on me, or B, having an actual project to work on, or something that depends on it. It doesn't hurt to pay thousands of dollars a year to be like, well, you're wasting this, buddy.
You're better off paying thousands of bucks developing a project.
Right, exactly. And
then then you've got some real application of it.
Yeah. Skin in the game is a very... I mean, that's a tough thing with like startups too, right? I mean, like a lot of people I know who are doing or have done startups, it's until you make that leap away from your job, it's not really a thing yet. There's no...
It's not real, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have any skin in the game yet. But once you do, then it's like, all right, it's go time. Let's do this, And might not be the best time to learn coding. It's not like, all right, I quit my job. What am I doing?
Writing an app sounds good. How do I know? Yeah. Do I know how to program? No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I can figure anything out. And it's like, I feel like with enough time and mentors and everything else that, a lot of things are learnable. But it's kind of balancing that.
Everything's learnable if you give it enough time, but yeah.
I don't know if I can learn how to dunk on a basketball hoop, but...
That requires some physical ability, which weedy nerds generally don't possess.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's sometimes restrictions like that, right? I mean, like if you're afraid of really hot things, you might not be great at soldering. Or if you have trouble like with, I guess, abstract math, right? Maybe programming would be a problem for you, right? If you're more of a, I guess linear algebra is the one that really helps with programming. That's what my programming friend tells me.
Yep.
And
as I've always said, it doesn't matter how you could practice chess every 20 hours a day for the rest of your life. You're still not going to beat Garry Kasparov at chess, right? Because his brain is just wired that way, and yours isn't. Tough shit.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Some things just require your brain to be wired a certain way, and you can't rewire it.
That's partially true. I think the other thing too is like, so like we've talked before about the 10,000 hour rule, right? Like how if if you get to 10,000 hours, you're probably an expert. That's always like what is talked about in there's a bunch of research on that kind of thing, and then it was talked about by Malcolm Gladwell in what was it called? Outliers. But the key with that, and I think it's really applicable to like circuit design too, is you need to, when you're practicing that 10,000 hours, an hour of practice only counts if you're actually getting feedback either from yourself or from peers, right? So I am going to do a layout on a high-speed design, and then I'm going to have my coworker look at it and tell me what I'm doing wrong in a design review. That hour counts.
Or the feedback can be from a simulator, or it can be from something else. You know, it can be from the compiler. Ooh, no, errors. You know, that's all feedback.
Yeah.
You know,
that is very important, because otherwise you're just kind of banging your head into a brick wall, and that's not really useful. So that doesn't count, right? And
it is if you want to knock down the brick wall.
Maybe eventually.
That's not a very
Andy Dufresne
efficient way
style,
to do
right?
it,
With a rock pick.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So practice is important, but only if you have some kind of feedback mechanism. So
right.
Yeah.
Is that negative feedback or positive feedback?
Depends on your mentor. If it's you, then it's negative. There was actually an interesting article from I think Adafruit posted this today, but it's on GigaOM, and it's one of the former guys that worked at Apple, and Bill Banta.
Yes.
It was really interesting too, because so he worked at Apple, but these are just kind of generally applicable hardware notes on, you know, how to make hardware, how to be a better hardware designer. And I think a lot of these things,
it's supply chain stuff, really.
True.
It's really about the supply chain.
I
That's
guess
what he's
so.
talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that is his context, but I mean, these things are also applicable if you have any control over these things. They're very important, and I think applicable even to smaller projects, you know, even hobby projects.
Oh, sure.
So, yeah, I mean, like, so he talks about getting inside the factory. That's a big one that I always liked, and not one that a lot of people have
Experience
to. I mean, yeah, well, and if you don't have, you know, if you don't have a manufacturing facility local, and you can't go talk to those people, then you're kind of handcuffed in the first place, right? I've been lucky enough to work with manufacturing people, and you will be surprised at things that they will tell you, and the colorful language that they will tell you it in, because they're saying things about you all day long, and when they're, you know, in the lunchroom and complaining about this crappy design that the engineers handed down. Right, I mean, you've worked on test fixtures and stuff too, right?
This obsolete part, the dickheads, you know.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I can't get this part to save my life, you know.
Right, yeah, that's from the supply side.
And
but
now
I mean,
it's my fault because I can't get to buy the part, you know.
Right, yeah. I mean, you've designed test fixtures before, right? And I'm sure that you've lamented, well, why the hell did they put the test point here, right? I mean, or why didn't they put the test point? That's a big one too, you know, when you don't put any test points at all.
Why did it? Yeah, someone's just handed me the responsibility to build a production test jig for this board, but the dickhead who laid out the board just has not thought of that. So, God, how do I do it? I don't know. Magic fairies hold test probes against it?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Crazy.
And yeah, I mean, in a production environment, oftentimes it's like, well, you're going to try and replicate a user experience, whereas the designer might know, well, okay, you know, if you feed this hex code to the micro, you can actually exercise the whole thing, but no one gives a crap about that, right? And if you were on the floor, you know that it's not practical to actually plug in a header each time, you know, or something like that, right? It's just, if you're not on the floor and you don't have context, and context is one of my favorite words in the world, obviously.
Right.
If you don't have context, though, you know, you're not probably doing good design. And it's funny to think about a lot of industries where that kind of stuff is decoupled, right? I mean, I think about like mobile phones, right?
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure that every mobile phone designer is using a mobile phone, but you know, in terms of actually develop like an OS and then actually being a full-time user of that.
Using it has nothing to do with designing it.
Right.
Designing a product like a mobile phone is all about the intricacies of getting it manufactured and tested. End of story. using it gives you no relevance
Okay, that's different
whatsoever
than what I was thinking.
to design unless you're the industrial designer of the phone, actually design, or the user interface guy designing the firmware or whatever, right? Yeah, then that has relevance. But apart from that, if you're actually laying out the boards or doing something else, using a phone has absolutely no relevance to you whatsoever.
Well, I mean, you might have to put in certain sensors that might be new, right? I mean, that could be a use case.
Yeah, but that's just a top level feature spec, which is handed down, via the stone tablets from bloody Mount Sinai,
Yes, this phone will have 3 accelerometers.
Exactly.
People need to play games.
I guess you're right. I mean, there's that one, but
there's all the DFX stuff, right? There's design for test. There's design for manufacturability, which is one you were just mentioning.
Yep. There's design for reliability in terms
design
of
for repair.
There's design for environment, and there's there's design for repair. There's design for everything.
Yeah, there's a whole book, I'm sure, somewhere. I used to have a book, but I don't have that
what
anymore.
Are we telling people? Just it's all too hard. Just get the hell out of the electronics engineering industry now.
Leave it to the pros,
screaming.
Folks, like me and Dave, who aren't the pros.
Go and become a sales engineer or a marketing guy.
Well, that's kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the show. Is like at a certain point, you want to get out of the getting thrown around and having to design for this little one feature or one manufacturing optimization, right? And eventually, most people want to say, no. I get to define that now. I get to yell at the engineers. I get to talk to the customers and re-dilute it for everybody else. I think that's part of it. I haven't reached that point yet, but I think people want to do that eventually.
You think?
I don't know. Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
So what are some of the things on this list?
I'm just out of that game now. I'm just in a different industry now. Yeah,
I'm
still
You're
in the industry, but I'm in a different industry,
right.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're like an entertainer now.
Yeah, I'm an infotainment specialist.
It's funny to think about.
Yeah, I know. It's like
Billy Mays here. Dave does infomercials.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Some other things on this list
do hardcore stuff anymore. It's just nope.
Oh. Well, maybe you'll get back to it. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows
maybe.
what the future holds?
Right.
Who knows what she who must be obeyed tells you what to do soon enough.
Right.
Some other things on this list are build prototypes close to home. That's a good one too. I mean I think that's kind of common knowledge that just quick turn is worth a lot, right? I mean, you're either gonna find someone who does it close to home and pay the price in terms of management yelling at you, or you're gonna pay through the nose for farming it out to someone close to home, or pay through the nose to get it shipped to you really, really quickly. I mean,
yep.
In prototyping, speed is all about it's the whole game,
it's speed. Yeah, everything is speed.
Iteration.
Yeah, we'd get 8-layer boards spun in 24 hours.
That's insanity.
Just I know, it's madness.
I want to see that. I want to see that video tour of that prototyping place. That seems crazy to me.
Well, I do have a video of my board, of my PCBs being actually manufactured, each step of the process.
Right, but not in 24 hours.
It's only a lousy 2-layer board, and you look at it, and it's like, and there's like 15 different manufacturing steps which goes into making a 2-layer board, let alone an 8-layer board.
Right, exactly. Well, not 24 hours either. I mean, like that's crazy. I mean, at 8 layers, you need to be like super automated.
Yeah.
I think.
Some poor bastard has worked for 24 hours non-stop, or they've handed over to the next shift. There's 3 shifts which have manufactured your board. They don't just turn it out in a couple of hours. It literally takes the full 24-hour process to, and then your board is tying up the whole line,
Right, you just bought yourself a spot in line, and you get the jump sees, right?
That's it.
No cutbacks,
and that's why we'd pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for that board. That one board to get it manufactured in, and then it'd be express shipped, by FedEx or whatever, and on their fastest service, and and we'd have it in 2 days. It's madness.
Killer. That is killer.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be one of those people that does courier service, where you actually like hop on a plane. You know, your only job is to deliver something.
Right, to hand deliver it, and then
it's crazy.
Crisis couriers, they call them.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened when FedEx first started, right? FedEx, they were like a startup. You know, FedEx were a start. I can't remember the guy's name or how he, quit his job or whatever to start FedEx, right? And he went into and he tried to get venture capital funded and all that sort of stuff. And people just laughed at him. They said, "Why would anyone need their package within 24 hours?
Yeah.
Why? That's just mad." This was back in, I don't know, when did they start? 60s or something,
Yeah.
Or 70s or something. But yeah, he was turned down by every single person. They said, "Why the hell would anyone need their package so quick? What's the rush?" And well, that's the world.
Well, welcome to today.
Yeah, that's right. Well, welcome to the 1980s.
Yeah.
Let alone today. Yeah, we live in a fast-paced world.
We do. Especially when transportation hasn't gotten any faster. It becomes even more critical that all the handoffs happen at the right times.
Yep.
These other 3 points are more supply side from this article.
Yeah.
China isn't the only game. Job doesn't end after launch, and
blah blah.
Inventory is evil. Yeah. Those
blah,
three
blah.
where it's like, okay, they're good.
Yep.
The only thing that I didn't like is that the author says fire an engineer that says it's not possible.
Yes, that was hilarious.
That's a little bogus.
It is a little bogus because sometimes you need an engineer to tell you, no, that's just not possible.
Right.
Now, no, I actually agree with him though. On the surface, fire an engineer who says it's not possible. If that's all they're saying, a good engineer will
If they're
say
sitting in their
that's
chair
not
and they
possible,
say,
but here's how you do it. Right. Or here's the changes you need to make it possible. That's your good engineer.
Exactly.
Right.
Or here's the data that I've already tested that says this isn't possible, and here's a list of reasons why. Like if you come with that stuff, you should not be hiring. You should not be firing that person. You should be promoting them. You should be putting them in charge of something.
But it never happens because I don't know about you, but I was always the guy in the meeting who sticks his hand up and says, "That's not possible," right? and then that's why I never got promoted, right? That's why they stuck me in a corner and just that's it. So but I would always put a but on the end of it. I would go, "That's not possible. This is what you need to do. This is a better way to do it. Here's a practical way that'll work."
Right.
Your idea's bullshit, and I could rattle off 10 reasons why.
Right.
I wouldn't just say, "Oh, that's not possible."
Yeah,
I wouldn't just be
the guy who's like,
down.
"Oh, there's your problem." If you're the guy who says
Exactly.
that, then that guy needs to
But
go.
unfortunately, in the real world, no, that doesn't get you promoted either. Because if you always, it's a tough line to,
Toe.
Yeah, to toe, yeah. Because the people who got promoted were the ones who would just say yes all the time and then never deliver anything. But, but because they said yes all the time, they got promoted.
That was another discussion I had this weekend. With my buddy. It's interesting because middle management seems like it's a sea of saying yes. Of follow the leader and saying yes and passing blame and everything. But it's interesting because at some point, and maybe people would argue this point, at some point when you get to be an executive, true leaders at some point have to make that switch, right? You have to navigate through that field of middle management and yes men and everything else and passing the buck. At some point, someone has to take charge, right? At some point, the buck stops somewhere.
Yep.
And it's interesting because someone has to make that switch at some point. And I have no idea how that happens or who that happens to, but it's
me neither.
Necessary because there are some. I mean, for as much as you and I complain about it, there are some really good leaders out there, right? I mean, some people would point to Tim Cook or other people that are like that. They're decisive. They treat their people well. They make good products and everything else. But at some point they had to navigate.
And those people never bother with the details. I find. I am a detail guy, right? I will always have a reason why something won't work or a reason why that something will work or an alternative, and I can just bang, I'll instantly know it, right? Because I'm that sort of, detail kind of guy. Whereas you can't be that kind of person. If you go to that top level, you can't worry about the details. You have to.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what I am yet.
You just have to learn to let go.
I'll figure it out.
I don't know.
Well, speaking of details, we should get to the details of our sponsor for this week.
We should?
Yes. So our sponsor
Triad Semiconductor.
That's right. And they have a new product.
My best radio voice.
Oh.
They do. Well, and this is high end, folks. This is some serious shit technology.
This is, I don't think we've talked about it yet, but it's pretty cool. I mean, so we've talked about it in strokes before. So we've mentioned FPGAs, right? Obviously, that's something that Dave's worked on, I've worked on. And we've also mentioned in passing FPAAs, which is field programmable analog arrays. And it seems like...
We've talked about ASICs, too.
Of course, right.
And how it's so expensive to spin ASICs and blah, blah.
Right. And Triad is working on a new technology. It's a mixed signal, so it's actually kind of a mashup between an FPGA and an FPAA. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of cool. I mean, so basically they have a software called VIA Designer, and that's actually what's sponsoring this week, is called VIA Designer and viadesigner.com. Yeah, yep. And then there's a /the amp hour if you want to go to the page dedicated to us. But so you can go on there, and then basically it's like a block diagram definition of analog blocks, digital blocks, and everything else. And then you can define the different characteristics. And we'll get into this later in the week, too, kind of the specifics of it. But you can basically design a signal chain, a mixed signal chain through this program, and then download it to something called a VIA ASIC. And VIA ASIC is basically that mashup of FPGA and FPAA. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm excited about it. I have not tried it yet. Dave has not tried it yet in person. But
no, it's a high end solution for higher end problems.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like they are a partner with NASA. If that doesn't say it, I don't know what it is. But it is going to be higher end. But they're working on really interesting technology. I mean, this is one of those great deals where they wanted to sponsor the show, but it's also really cool tech. So it's kind of balancing that line of, Well, I really do think this is cool. How much work
goes into writing that software?
A lot more software than I've ever written.
It's incredibly extensive. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculously, just the feature set of software like that. It's just incredible. With the simulation and everything else, and the whole
so
the whole 9 yards that goes along with that.
There's different parts you can buy. There's VCA. So VCA is VIA Configurable Array. There's 1 through 12. And me and Dave were trying to find these before the show, but I just found them. So the VCA 12, it's got 14 op amps, 5 single-ended
1100
OTAs,
resistors, 738 caps.
5,000 ASIC gates.
It's got caps on die. It's got high voltage transistors. It's got 5,000 ASIC gates and 46 I/O configurable I/O pins.
Right. And so it's not necessarily, it's always that balance point, right? I used to get really excited about, there was another company that was doing reconfigurable analog, and then I got to it and I'm like, oh, the specs aren't as great as I am. But the real thing is not necessarily the specs on, I mean, these are good specs, but it's the reconfigurability that really matters more so than anything else. So if you value reconfigurability, that's really where you're going to find a lot of value in this kind of thing.
If you designed your product, right, and you've released it out in the field, and then you go, damn, look, in this usage case scenario, we really need some extra filtering in that part of the chain there.
Right.
And, in your traditional design, you're going to respin the whole thing.
Yep,
but
exactly.
Here, you can just go, well, I can whack an extra filter in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a problem.
So we will be talking about them more throughout the week, but we want to introduce them from our new sponsor. So I think we found a good one.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Triad.
I like it.
So,
and they do ones with RF transceivers as well, up to 3 gig.
Yeah.
They've got the RF VCA version of that.
Which is, of course, way out of our expertise.
And then they've got ones with, ARM Cortex. There's one with an ARM Cortex M0 as well.
Yep.
So they've got analog, digital, and ARM Cortex M0 on the one chip. Very impressive.
Very cool.
Yep.
So we'll link that in and check out viadesigner.com/theamphour for more information. Speaking of RF, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to Hamfest in Dayton this year. I'm sure I'm going to hear a lot of stuff from our listening audience of, you gotta go. It's apparently so. Greg Charvat, the former guest of the Amp Hour, he's been trying to convince me, and I'm thinking about it. I'm really thinking about it, but I don't know, man. I felt outgunned. Just I.
So how far is Dayton from
Dayton's
Cleveland?
about 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, but I mean, to hear Greg talk about it seems like it's
that's a decent drive.
No, it's not. Really? Do you know how long it takes me to get to like Colorado or California?
Yeah, well, it's a different state, dude. I mean,
I guess, yeah. Kansas alone is like, 7 hours, 8 hours for me? I mean, just to get through that. Oh, that was a terrible drive. Driving across the U.S., as much as it's romanticized.
Why did you go to Kansas?
I went through Kansas.
You wanted to see the Julian Banjo Festival?
I wanted to see where crystal meth was born. No, sorry to all the Kansans out there.
And let me guess, you were running moonshine too in the boot.
Right? Yeah. No. I went to Colorado for spring break with some buddies and drove out there, and it was. I don't know. The romanticized road trip is just not my thing. I don't know.
Right. And it's never as good as the movies, right?
Never, ever. Come on. I mean,
no, it's just boring as batshit.
Gas stations and
it's gas stations and dodgy
trying
food,
to stay awake in the car. It's hate driving. Ugh. No, thank you.
Yep.
But if I was on the sea, maybe that would be a little more interesting than driving, especially if the boat I was on had a huge ass laser. Did you see this video?
You're just obsessed with it.
I'm not obsessed with it. It's just, the technology is crazy.
We've had it on here before. You've put it on here before. Every time there's a new video released of some ship blowing up a plane with a laser.
No, it wasn't a laser.
Johnny on the spot.
Last time it was a rail gun. All right, first off, think about the power requirements for this crap, right? With a rail gun, it's like, it's like thousands of amps at a time. That's magnetics, obviously, but lasers, that's a whole other game, that's just something.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. That's like you said before the show. That's like some Star Wars stuff, not really. But
I'm not going to be happy unless it actually, you can see the beam fire out,
Yeah. Which I don't think is very realistic.
I want to see a pulsar beam go, boom, and then a plane blow up. Otherwise it's just boring.
I guess so.
So the only thing you see is this green dot on the side of the plane that catches on fire. Whoop-de.
Yeah. I don't know. It's scary though. It's I'm not a big fan of military technology in the first place, but it's it's kind of cool.
No, that's some heavy ass engineering, right there.
Oh yeah.
That's the power requirements are there's two technologies here. There's one, the power supply requirements.
Yes.
For this thing, the energy, just the pure energy storage, and two is the physics that goes into producing the laser,
like the cooling and everything else.
At that amount of power. I would probably cryogenically frozen or something, cooled or something. I don't know.
I saw Mike Harrison did a video on lasers. I haven't watched it yet, but I need to watch that one.
Oh, is that new?
He was talking about low end lasers, Mike's electric stuff.
Oh, right.
Mike, former guest.
Right.
Mike Harrison.
Yeah, I didn't know he had a new video on laser.
Oh yeah, new video. YouTube alerts. I would add a third one to that list of engineering challenges too. Though is control systems. This is a little bit less technically stringent, right? But it's still,
that's the third leg of this is to be able to target and track the plane, because this laser doesn't just have to hit it once; it's got to stay on it for like 5 seconds or something, right?
Yeah, it's no longer like
that thing.
You're firing something like a smart missile that can then, it has its own control system on it that can go find heat or whatever. This is like you are a fixed point. There is something, 1,000 meters away, and you have to stay fixed on that. So as the boat bobs up and down, you have to, compensate and everything else.
But the thing is, the plane it's just a drone which is continuously flying. If there was a pilot in there, they'd be going, oh shit, my ass is hot. And, and they're just going to get the hell out of there, right?
Move away from green dot. Yeah. Yeah. It's tough because it's, like I said, it's military tech, so it's like, God, they always have so much money behind it, right? Like DARPA, right? I mean...
Well, they only spent a lousy $40 million on this. That's chump change.
Well, on that one, but I mean, just the breadth of their programs is it's unbelievable, right? I mean, how about this Pet Man? Did you see this video of
Pet Man?
Pet Man from Boston Dynamics, the robot company that does
no Pet Man. What is this? A man who has 1,000 pets? What?
No, it's an upright walking robot, and. Pet Man has been out before. I mean, so it's like a gyro stabilized robot that actually walks on two legs. It has arms, right? It's super creepy.
What a ridiculous name.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. It's an acronym, obviously. Yeah, but it's a DARPA funded thing, and basically now what they did though is so they just released a video of it walking on a treadmill, right? Alone, not scary, but because it's wearing a camo suit, it's got this really herky jerky motions, and it looks quasi, you can't tell necessarily it's a robot, right? You could probably get someone to make these motions with their body. Oh, it is so creepy. I hate it.
But just something's not quite right there, and that's going, shit.
Yeah. Robots creep me out. And
your mind starts thinking Skynet,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if that's ever going to go away, right? I mean, even if you get to the point of sentient... kind robots, you still kind of get into the iRobot side of things, right? Like the Will Smith movie. And it's like, well, obviously it was a Asimov novel first, but
right.
I don't know, man. Oh, it's just so creepy. I mean, I'm sure we've talked about this before. The Uncanny Valley, right? Where that is. Yeah. It's like the robots look just human enough to really. They look more and more and more human.
To give you nightmares, yeah.
Right, well, no, it falls off at a certain point. So they look more and more and more human, but they get to a certain point, and they look just close enough that they creep everyone the hell out. Like all those robots that, they make in Japan of, actual faces, but you can still tell the robots.
Oh, right, yeah, right. Oh. Yeah, there's a whole robot sex industry,
Yeah, the heebie-jeebie industry.
Yeah.
No. But, it's... I mean, the technical side of me loves it. I mean, the control systems and just the power requirements and everything, they need tons of awesome stuff. All of, Boston, too. Boston is just a great robotics area. And it's a cool industry and everything about it, but man, if it's not a Roomba, it scares the crap out of me. and you got to watch the video, man. It's really, really creepy. I don't know.
Anything that you can't just kick over, can't just go bugger off, and
even if I could kick it over,
then it just lies on its back and flipping its legs.
No, because if it's kicking its legs and it looks like a little bug, then it creeps me out. I'm afraid of bugs too.
Right.
I'm a very frightened person in general.
You have to come visit Australia. We got none of that here.
I know what you're talking about, but no. The spiders and everything else out there. No, thank you.
Yep. Dude, we have to talk about this. The world is just gone crazy. They're not printing markings on resistors anymore.
I saw this. So this was posted on Dangerous Prototypes. But this has been going on for a while, right?
It's been going on for a long time. They just decide to... Yeah, I guess it's it's the first time they've seen it, right? I've seen it before. It's not a...
Well, I mean, I've been seeing the trend, but it's not like... I haven't seen any official announcements, but you say Yagio or Yagio? I don't know.
Yeah, Yago.
Yeah. But they officially announced that they're not doing it.
They've made an announcement.
Yeah.
Right? From July 1st, 2013, they will no longer put markings on all of their resistors. And
it sucks.
I guess you can, if you don't like it, you can vote with your wallet, go to another manufacturer that does. And they're saying, the thing is, they're saying the reason for the change is to reduce, quote, unnecessary chemical usage for environmental protection. bullshit. It's to
it's cost.
Lower their bottom line. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. It's to improve
every
their bottom
time you
line.
print something,
Bullshit.
you silk screen. It's not actually the cost of the
It's
ink.
an
It's the
extra
cost
step.
of the time. Yeah.
Exactly. It's an extra step and when these things cost 0.00001 cents each, especially
Right.
for Apple,
Yep.
they're no.
Right. They figure that it's being placed anyways, and then most of their industry, they probably did a calculation of most of our market is consumer or anything else. Anyone buying these resistors are low enough cost, and at that point, you're not designing for repair like we mentioned earlier in the show. You are designing for manufacturing and high volume manufacturing, and if it's breaking, you're just throwing it out. It becomes the 0.1% yield that you lose. Like that.
Yep.
I guess that wouldn't be yield.
And if you've got thorough and extensive testing procedures, it doesn't matter if you have. It matters to prototypes, right? If you're the designer and you've manufactured your prototype, you get it back. You need to verify that resistor is the value that you designed in, and they haven't programmed the pick and place machine wrong. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right. And but once you've got all your manufacturing set up properly, it doesn't matter a rat's ass.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of manufacturers will try and save a couple of cents by not silk screening their boards either, because that's one less step in the process. You can save, 10 cents per board if you don't get, a top silk screen on with R1, R2,
Yep.
I mean,
yeah. And there's a little bit of a security, IP kind of thing there too, but it's probably not the main thing.
Possibly.
The main thing is cost.
No.
Almost everything is driven by cost.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it's tough too, because when you think about prototyping and probing a board, right? I mean, I can't tell you the number of times where I'm like, oh, well, I'll just probe this. I'll do a easy. I'll ohm out this resistor, and then there's another one hiding just underneath the surface that's in parallel with it, and then I think, oh, this is the wrong resistor value. This is what it. Wait a second. Desolder it. No, it was right.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Have you ever seen maybe if someone could make those tweezers, those heated desoldering tweezers, but then also build in a grunty a grunty ohm meter. That is an invention, my friends.
Right there.
Pull it off and measure it immediately, and then place it right back down. I would.
No, I'll tell you what you need, which a lot of most meters do not have these days.
What's that?
I'll tell you what, is a low voltage ohm measuring range. When I was a boy,
Yeah.
they had multimeters had a button on them. They had this button on them, you see, where you can push
a physical
and gives you
button.
a low ohm voltage range, so you
None of
wouldn't
these
turn on
digital
semiconductor
wing
junctions.
jobbies.
And
Yeah.
I mean, some multimeters do. When you go to measure resistors in circuit, they will they'll have a high enough voltage to turn on PN junctions.
Oh,
And,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
See, usually it's not the PN junctions that trip me up. I mean, that has happened before, but
Well, it's others, yeah.
Yeah, mostly it's the it's other things in parallel. You see another ground or something like that.
Well, and that all comes back to, semiconductor junctions, and then you got all the shit across your rails, and
Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
It's a
How
There
high
you go.
voltage does it go? Does it 100 volts?
well enough to turn on semiconductor
so
junctions.
like 10 volt kind of thing, right? It's not
10 volt? No. You only need 0.6
2
volts
volt?
to turn on a semiconductor junction.
I know that, but I mean, there could be limits of other things too, right? I mean, break it through oxides or anything else. I don't know why the hell you'd do that. You're talking about on an ohm meter having the current limit. It has a voltage limit as well, so it doesn't.
Well, it has a voltage.
blow
Yeah, I
through
mean,
something,
current
right.
limits aren't just magic. They don't just there's not 0 volts in your system.
Right.
Kirchhoff's law must apply.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's been
They have a
pissing me off
maximum
recently. With I've been doing some spice stuff recently, and current sources.
using what package?
LT Spice. I mean, this is just a generic thing, though.
Just planar. Yeah.
Using. I love thinking of circuits and from a current perspective, right? I mean, I always making that switch was a very big deal for me, obviously, and I think everyone hits that point of voltage. No, current is where it's at.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about, and
Yeah.
but programming in current sources into Spice is dangerous, right? Because if you turn off so if you have a current flowing through something like a switch or a transistor or something, if you turn off the switch or the transistor, then it spikes to kilovolts and stuff like that, right?
It spikes to the maximum voltage you've set.
Exactly, and it's just LT Spice doesn't have that limit in it, so maybe that's the problem. There's no voltage limit built into the current source in LT Spice, at least maybe not that I found. So usually I end up putting like a diode in parallel or a Zener in parallel or something to try and mimic my system, right? Because if you have a current source, eventually it's going to run out of headroom on the voltage side of things, right? So if you have a current source that you're using, usually 12 volts, 20 volts, whatever, eventually it's going to run out of headroom at a voltage standpoint, and it's going to stop producing the current you need. Because current sources are a load of crap. I'm taking a stand here, folks. Current sources aren't real.
There's a T-shirt slogan for you.
Yeah, there it is, right? I will put that in. T-shirt slogan to remember. Current sources aren't real.
He's actually typing it, folks, yeah.
Yeah. I will remember this one. Now I've lost my train of thought. But anyways, it's tough in Spice when you use current sources. You need to have realistic boundaries at some point.
Well, because you're not using them for a practical simulation of your circuit. You're using them more as a concept thing.
Right, exactly.
To test a concept or something like that. It's not, unless you actually have a real current source in your system. Then,
right, which don't exist, as the T-shirt says.
Yeah, exactly. It does.
Yeah, because you're right. I mean, if I was trying to simulate a current source as I use one on my bench, right? If I have a current a DC current source on my bench, that's not really a current source. That's a voltage source with a current feedback, so that it uses that as a control mechanism.
Yes. My current source here has a maximum voltage knob on it,
right.
From 10 volts right up to 1,000 volts.
Right, and that might be the current source that I used as well. But yeah, it's tough to. You really have to simulate what you're actually using, right? The theoretical models, it's not realistic.
Yeah, but they're useful for concepts, for testing concepts. Right. And that's generally what I use simulators for. I'm not testing to see if my circuit works, at every single, at a real practical level with all my practical parts in there, blah, 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 blah. I'm testing some sort of concept,
Yeah.
Is it stable? Will it oscillate? Or, will it, is it going to give the accuracy I require? Or something like that,
Yeah. Oh, what else should we talk about this week? Or do you want to keep talking current sources?
I'm going to give a toss about current sources. You brought up.
Good. I did too. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I got distracted thinking about...
And then now you pissed away the rest of the show because our time's up.
No, we're fine. We're fine.
We had people complain the show doesn't go long enough.
We can keep going. So here's... I have stuff from... So I was looking at vintage stuff, right? Vintage amp hour from all of 2.5 years ago, right? I'm like, oh, Workbench of the Week. How quaint. And then I asked for suggestions on Twitter and Facebook today. Someone sent in the Workbench. So this is going to be Workbench of the Week.
Woohoo!
Cue the clip. Did we...
Me?
We got rid of the clip? Remember I used to do that stuff? That's what I'm talking about.
I don't even remember what the clip was.
I know, that's what I'm talking about. Workbench of the week. Week.
That's right, I had some echo
I remember that. Okay, so Dave, I just sent that to you because I actually didn't send it to Dave. But this is from... Oh, crap. Who's it from? It is from... Jose Reyes on Facebook. He sent it in, and because he did, we were going to talk about it. So he sent in a picture of his workbench, and this is actually a log of his build of it. So this is kind of cool. It's a Flickr set. Looks like he's got... this is the classic. This is the same one I have. The cheapo power supply special. I have the HY3002. You see that in the top left there? It's from Electronics Express. That's the one I got it from. I've seen them a couple different places, but that's actually not a bad power supply. I don't know if you've used it.
I've used them, yeah.
Yeah.
They go under generic brand names. Like there's one company that manufactures them.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, my display broke on it, but it's a pretty solid power supply. It's not bad.
Right.
Big old orange button.
There's an analog scope.
Analog scope, classic.
Yep.
What kind of soldering iron is that? Is that a? It's not a Metcal, is it?
That's a Heiko.
Heiko, okay.
Yep.
And then he's got
I believe, anyway.
Yeah.
It's a bit fuzzy, but it's blue and yellow. So
blue and yellow is usually a sign. Either that or a rip-off on it, right? Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
then he cuts it to he cleaned up his bench at one point here, so he looks like an RC hobbyist. Right, but, this is good stuff. All right, well, I guess that's all we have to say about it this week. But
Workbench of the week.
Yeah, exactly.
Week.
So thanks, Jose. We do appreciate people sending it in. This was a last minute ask, so I thought it's a nice retro throwback. Good old days.
Because we've been doing this shit for 2.5 years.
2.5 years. Oh, he's got a drill press in later pictures. That's an important one too.
Oh yeah. All right. Oh yeah. Oh, there we go. Now we're talking.
Yeah, that's nice and messy.
Now
that's
it's filled with stuff. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
That's what I want to see. Yeah, you can't see the bench anymore. That's what you want.
Right, exactly.
Because it's just filled with so much crap. Yep. Brilliant.
Okay, so people may remember I used to do Chip Report TV.
Used to, till that failed.
Yeah, it didn't fail, it just faded.
Well, it
faded.
Couldn't be bothered anymore.
Yeah. But so since I don't do that anymore, so people have asked about that too. So in the survey and everything else, they said, "Oh, bring back Chip of the week and everything else like that." And I found one this week that I really like. It's pretty cool, and it's actually kind of relevant to our current source discussion before, because in a perfect current source, right? You would have something that doesn't give a crap about what kind of load you have in line or resistance or anything else. And this is a new part from LT that actually it's meant to compensate for drops in cables. So this is the LT 6110 cable wire drop compensator.
As in power drop, or we're talking data comms?
Well, that's interesting you asked that, because basically what they're saying is that if you try and put power over a data line, like a power over Ethernet with like real tiny wires and stuff like that, you have a really big drop to deal with normally. And so basically that's the market it's meant for. It's meant for like, power over Ethernet, 48 volt kind of stuff.
Right.
Or, if you're just kind of in a tight spot. So that's the part I kind of like, is if you're in a tight spot, you can have this monitoring chip there and it will monitor.
What it does, I'm looking at the block diagram here. What it does is you can't use it on its own, but what it has is a little current sensor in there, and then you put it in the feedback loop of your regulator.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then
so
it boosts the
tricks
voltage
it out
up on your regulator.
Exactly.
So, right.
It tricks it out so like if people think about like a cable drop, right? You need to actually ramp the voltage much higher to overcome the resistance in a cable in order to get the current out at your load, right? What this does is it kind of hides that from the feedback until it supplies the correct amount of current and voltage, and then it feeds back the right signal. And so it's a very sneaky chip. But LT's done this kind of stuff before, where they've had paired chips before, where obviously they probably want you to use their regulator as well. But
well, let's talk about that, shall we?
Yeah. Oh, right, yours. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, you know how I spent ages designing this LT 3080.
Yeah, this is for your
wonderful regulator chip, which we've talked about many times.
This is for your power supply and everything else?
Power supply, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's issues with it. It appears that there are issues with it.
Really? What's going on?
They're blowing up.
Well, that's not always a chip issue. Let's just get to that first.
There are discrepancies in their data sheet, and we still haven't got an official response back, but there's a forum link. Go check it out. And somebody found this at pretty much the same time I did. My latest prototype, I've been blowing up LT 3080s, and I haven't had time to properly investigate why. Yet I've just been too busy desoldering. I don't know, it blew it up. I'll have to investigate.
Yeah.
And putting in a new one. It blew up again. Shit. And,
that is the worst.
You just keep going through. Somebody else had the same problem. And then it turns out that they've got 3 versions of this architecture chip, the LT 3080, the 3083, and the 3085, and it looks like the 3083 and the 3085 have a fix. Like, there's a slight difference between them and the 3080. And it has to do with back-to-back diodes between the set pin and the output pin, which they don't. Well, they tell you about, but it's, one of those little asterisk notes in fine print that if you don't read, and by the way, there's back-to-back diodes between, the set pin and the out pin. And it has to do with the amount of current which goes into the set pin. If it goes over 10 milliamps or something, forgive me if I'm getting it wrong, but it can latch up the chip or whatever, something like that, and that appears to be what's happening. And they don't tell you that in their spec. Their spec is wrong. And, and the other two versions of the chip have a series resistor in series. They have a resistor in series with those two back-to-back diodes, which the LT3080 does not. So that sort of implies that they've just secretly discovered this problem, and in the newer versions, the 3083 and the 3085, they've fixed it by putting a series resistor, but they haven't bothered respinning the 3080 to fix the problem. So, and there's discrepancies in the specs, as I said, and it's all very confusing, and based on their specs, their own application circuit should not work. Their own application circuit will exceed the specs and potentially blow up the chip. And that's what I was following, right? I thought, there's their example application node. It's got a big capacitor on the set pin, not a problem. But apparently having that capacitor on the set pin can cause the set pin to then, if you short your output, because you've got a capacitor on the set pin, it can hold that charge there. Then you can get a big voltage differential between the set pin and the out pin of your regulator. And bingo, that suddenly exceeds the spec and boom.
Yeah.
Your chip blow. Anyway, that's the theory that several people have got at the moment. And it seems plausible to me. And we're waiting for a response back from LT.
We will have to wait. But saying 3080 triggered my memory. And it triggered memories of one of the most frightening and awesome emails I've ever gotten, which was from Bob Dobkin mentioning
Bob Dobkin.
Yeah, when we mentioned
that's right.
the chip.
He's actually done a video on the LT30. Didn't he design it or something? I think
it was his. Yeah, and so he wrote us an email thanking us for. I think it was back in May of 2011. We covered it on the show, and then. He wrote to me, and I'm just like, what? I mean, this is the CTO of Linear, right? That's crazy, man.
Yeah. That's right.
Everyone says he's an awesome guy. I've never met him, but so maybe they'll write back.
Maybe he can come on the show and explain the LT38 and why they're blowing up.
He said the 3092 is the 200 milliamp version of this too, so maybe that's another good comparison point. Because you said the 3083 and the 3085, so if the 92 has the same thing, I don't know.
Right,
but
anyway,
yeah, you never want to be the one who finds the errata in silicon.
And that's the problem, right? I've spent forever, and I've done like 15 videos, right?
Yeah.
Of this power supply designing in the LT3080, and I'm just at the point where I'm trying to get my final prototype tested and into production. Right, so I can finally finish this heap of shit, and this comes
for the second year in a row,
right? Yeah, well, that's right. But but this time I mean it.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
right,
all
folks.
of a sudden, this LT3080 problem comes along, and now I've got to decide whether or not I should just go, look, screw this. I'm going to abandon this. I'm not going to take the chance, even if we think we've solved it. Right, we think that we may be able to solve it by putting Schottky, like low voltage drop Schottky diodes in parallel with the voltage regulator, right? Because by measurement, the internal ones aren't Schottky, they're 0.6. So if we use Schottkys, we can keep it to 0.3, and that brings it under the spec, and it shouldn't blow up. But, well, how do I test that, right? I could test it here. I could build 10 of them and test it. But what happens if 1 in 100 fail?
Yeah,
right?
The stochastic smoke test.
So I go into production and I'm going to build thousands of these, right? I'm sure,
hopefully,
probably 1,000. Yeah. Well, based on my microcurrent and everything, it's probably, I'd be surprised if I couldn't sell 500 or 1,000 of these things.
Yeah.
And, and I've got to take that chance.
Well, more so than that, too.
Right?
I mean, you think about the whole... So your whole forum's been looking at this chip, right? Obviously, other people look to you as someone who's designing with it, and so obviously it's a trusted part, and
that's right.
It's just like a waterfall effect, right? Oh, well, Dave used it. I'm okay with using it, and that happens with us too, right?
And then
we use it because of application
I used
circuits.
it is because it had the example. So I was just following one of the example circuits LT had. So I thought, LT must have tested that, And,
well, I'm sure.
So I was safe, and then it snowballs, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone starts trusting everyone else,
and that's why recalls suck ass. If you ever get in a position where you have to do a recall, you are screwed. I mean, that can bankrupt businesses, right? I mean, like, it's a real thing. If you have a true recall, there is no. I mean, because it's not just your product getting. You don't just have to replace it, right? Maybe you have to get 10,000 units back, and you have to desolder a chip and resolder it and send it back out. There's cost to that, but then there's also, then there's like the car manufacturers where they just recall the entire product line, and then there's the things like the Toyotas where they don't only recall the product line, they're hurting people and their brand name is hurt, right? I mean, like there are so many levels of crap that can hit the fan. It's just unbelievable. So test your stuff.
Absolutely,
the more
folks.
you know.
Although I must say, in the defense of LT, I am trying to drive the set pin, which is not the which is not the mode of operation of this chip, right? I'm trying to override it. But, because it's got a pissy little 10 microamp current source on that pin, so I can drive over that, and
right, and then marketing pops and they say, "Well, we spec'd it that way," right? I mean, that's why people say they have specs, right? I mean, like, there's always that corner case where, you're going to either get in a lawsuit or, in a worst case, or in a an argument or something like that. It's tough, man. So you're driving against the current source.
Yeah, I'm driving against the current source. Yes, I'm overriding that current source.
I guess I didn't quite get that. Oh, man.
So, but based on what people are finding in the data sheets for this thing now, several people are investigating, it looks like, their own application circuit in the data sheet will ensure that the chip exceeds its own specs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. And so now I've got a huge decision to make, right? I've got to either push on with this chip and try and A, solve the problem, B, take a risk that it's not going to happen, in when I manufacture 1,000 of them, and or I can just go, look, screw this. I don't trust this thing any further. I can throw it. I've been built once bitten, twice shy. I'm just going to abandon it and go with something else.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's
crazy.
And even if LT come back and say, blah blah blah, and we assure you that it will meet its spec, blah blah blah, and we'll fix the data sheet, right? That still leaves a cloud, right? I can't just go back to them later when my things fail out in the field and go, but you said this, so you are going to pay for it. And they're just going to go give me the finger and go, well, bugger off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's tough, right? It's a confidence game almost, right? It's like it's like that with any it doesn't matter who the vendor is. At a certain point, you have to decide. You have to make that decision. I'm going to production with this, and there are serious consequences if something goes wrong, right? Like there was the buck
stops with me. It's my money and my ass on the line.
Right, but not always. That's not always the case, right? So there was an article today I saw. No. It was an article. It was a press release because they love this kind of stuff from the company side, but. NXP talked about how Moscow selected their part for like a ticketing system in Moscow's transportation center, right?
Right.
And it's like, in that case, that's even worse because someone at the top at like a purchasing level made this huge deal with them, right? And the buck stops at the buck, right? It's not like they were deciding based on. I mean, hopefully there was some kind of decision-making process based on technical side of things, but. Right. In that case, it's like, sometimes you don't get a choice in these decisions. It's crazy. I don't know. Like, have you ever had to just design what other people told you to design with before? Obviously.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I mean, like.
Countless times.
Yeah. You're hamstrung by vendors, decisions, and purchasing agreements.
I think we keep going over the same stuff all the time. We've talked about this, I'm sure. Maybe even a couple of weeks ago. It seems familiar anyway. That... often that can be a good thing, being told what to do, because then you've got no choice. You have to, as a designer, you have to, hey, my hands are tied, fine. At least the boundaries are set. You know?
I don't know if that... Yeah, we did talk about that, but we weren't talking about vendors. We were talking about design constraints. I don't think which parts I could use would be part of that. I don't know. I wouldn't list the parts I can use as a input that I want, constrained. If you can tell me I have half a watt of power... If I have half a watt of power, that's a design constraint I can work with, right? Because then I can go out I can seek out different solutions and.
But no, like trying to pick a microcontroller, right? There's millions of them. How do you pick, right? It's ridiculous. Whereas if somebody tells you we have to use this microcontroller because we use it in our other product, well, that's fine. Your decision's made for you. I don't have to spend a week agonising over which bloody microcontroller to use.
I guess so. I don't know.
I mean, sometimes it's just good to be told,
I guess I
wouldn't can get on to more fun stuff.
I wouldn't have listed that as what
right
as the decision I want made for me, but yeah, I guess so. Top-down decision making, like no. If I have a hand in it, that's fine. But if it's just handed to me like that, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, if I know the project's going to fail, I go, excellent, I didn't make that decision. Somebody else made it, and it's not going to be my fault. I know this project's going to fail, and it won't be my fault. Yes, I can just sit back and watch the train wreck.
You've got middle management written all over you.
Oh, yes.
We'll get someone under you right away, Peter. Oh, man. That's like
the only way I survived in companies like that was just watching the fun, it was just hilarious. It was living in Dilbert land, and it was just, if you take things too seriously, you just go
I agree with the taking things too seriously, but man, that's, that mental switch is tough,
Anyway, we're way over time, hour and 20 minutes.
We have so much more to talk about, Dave. All right, well, fine. If people want to go find other links that we didn't talk about this week, they can check out reddit.com/r/theamphour, which is where we put links all week long, and
that we never get to.
Yeah, we try to get to, but we can't always get to. But yeah, if you want to comment on things or add your own, please feel free, and we try and get to them if we can.
Oh, we didn't talk about the Sputnik schematic.
I know, that's cool. What I'm saying.
Somebody found the Sputnik schematic.
Let's just list off all the things we didn't talk about. The Sputnik schematic. Let's see what else. I had a follow-up from the visa program from last week. It was only 65,000 that H-1Bs in the U.S., by the way. Right. The gene machine, that IEEE article that you were talking about earlier before the show. I guess that's it. Oh, and then that graphene crap where they say they'll charge your phone in 5 seconds. Yeah, right. I guess things to talk about next week or something.
All right.
No, next week we'll have a guest probably, but
yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. Yep. In the meantime, if people can give us iTunes ratings, that'd be great. And we can be found on the Twitters and the Facebooks and everywhere else too.
Yeah, but I don't read Facebook.
That's fine. All right, cool.
Hate it.
We'll until then, I'll be on Facebook making fun of Dave.
Cool. And I'll be behind the 8 ball as usual.
All right. Good luck. See you next week.
Sweet. Bye.
This episode of the Amp Hour was brought to you by Triad Semiconductor. If you need maximum flexibility in both the analog and digital realm, check out the VIA ASIC and associated VIA Designer software. Visit viadesigner.com/theamphour and enter AMP100 at registration for a free year subscription, a $500 value.